Hi and welcome to episode 7 of the Hive Buzz. I am your host Velamina Simono and we are back yet again with another interesting topic. And this time around we are talking mental health in the advertising industry. I am joined by two lovely people, Ashley and Fifi, as we will be unpacking exactly how does it roll in the advertising industry and how does our mental health actually deteriorate as we are trying to navigate our way in this big bad industry. Now, as you might remember, it is Pride Month, as you can see the burst of colors, and at the same time it is Mental Health Awareness Month. Hi guys, so I am sitting with Ashley and Fifi, part of the advertising industry, and today we are talking mental health. But just before I dip into that, how have you guys been? I know this time of the year is quite busy in the advertising industry, so how have you guys been?
Easy. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Normal feelings that come with this time of the year.
Yeah.
The burnouts are slowly creeping in, but otherwise, we're clean, easy. Yeah, we move. Ashley?
I'm great, thank you. Doing a lot of, preparing and anticipating the holiday season.
Yeah.
Time to take a break, but I'm also doing my best to keep my workload in balance with my mental health.
And that's all that matters, doing our best. So guys, let's just dive into it. You're in the advertising industry, we're talking mental health. What does mental health mean in such an industry?
I don't think we can have like a specific industry localized definition, because mental health is mental health no matter where you work. And in my opinion, mental health means being psychologically and emotionally balanced. So no internal turmoil, no repressed issues, no burnout, no stress. So the absence of bad emotional circumstances, bad psychological circumstances, but also the presence of peace and happiness and joy and focus.
Fifi, what does mental health mean to you in such an industry?
Wow. In such an industry, the space that we live in is so demanding. It's a wake up and go. There's never an opportunity to... There is no such thing as downtime in the world of Adland. Even in the festive season where most people shut down, there is no downtime in the world of Adland because speaking to people never stops. It's an ongoing thing. You are constantly talking to people in various ways, depending in which part of this industry that you form part of. So for me, I think for the most part, I'd say that mental health in this space is finding yourself in a position where you're stretched enough to not feel overcompromised, but are still able to deliver. Because at the end of the day, there is no rest for the wicked in the space.
Yeah, I mean, true.
There is no rest for the wicked.
So true.
Yeah, and just diving in both of your definitions, what are some of the most common symptoms of a deteriorating mental health in the advertising industry? I mean, you touched on burnout, but someone might just be there watching the show today and thinking, I didn't even know that I'm going through this. So what are the most common symptoms in such an industry?
So speaking from personal experience, it's not just burnout that you're at risk of. There's depression, there's anxiety, there's addiction. Some people even go through like psychotic or manic episodes. And there's different like signs, right? But I'm just going to talk on burnout specifically. The moment you find yourself feeling like you're constantly tired, no matter how much you sleep, and you have no drive to do anything, and everything feels like a chore, even non-work activities, then it's probably a red flag, and you need to pay attention to that engine overheating light in your head.
And Fifi, for you, what do you think are some of the most common symptoms of a deteriorating mental health in advertising?
I think one of the most common symptoms of a deteriorating mental health in the ad space is feeling uninspired. Because at the end of the day, the crux of what we do falls on how creative and what we draw inference and inspiration from. And if even the things you love leave you uninspired, then you know you are at the bridge of a mental breakdown or your mental health is deteriorating, if the things that made you happy no longer somehow drive you to see the bigger picture, or to be able to pick up but guys, but maybe there's a little golden speck in this. Then you should start knowing that at this point you're really at a point whereby you just need to tap out.
Yeah.
You need to tap out before the tap out becomes an unhealthy tap out.
Oh yeah.
So I think in our space, the moment you are uninspired, all things come crumbling down, because then it ricochets. It's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Because when you're uninspired, you don't deliver your best work. You're not creative. So eventually you start to feel like, am I really good at what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Do I know what I'm doing? Am I delivering at my optimum peak?
Yeah.
So I think that's the beginning of a very, very dangerous space in the world of advertising, because if you're not in the space, you're never going to get it. When someone says, I'm just not inspired right now, nothing is burning a fire inside of me.
Yeah.
That for me is the
key
biggest red flag.
Yeah.
If the moment I start feeling like that, or I see someone is feeling like that, it's, dude, just tap out.
Yeah.
Tap out and go do something that requires you not to think at all.
And when you're touching on it, because I always hear people talk about how, oh, you should only be in advertising when you're young. But the thing is, when you're creative, you're a creative. It's one of those where you can, because creativity doesn't run out. It's an ongoing thing, right? And I think maybe this is like a two question in one type of thing to say, you've hinted that when you start losing inspiration, it means that's the beginning of a deteriorating mental health. But one, is there a way you can tell that, you know what, I'm about to lose everything here? Is there a way to tell when you're about to deteriorate? And also, you touched a bit on it to say, what can you do when you start seeing that your mental health is deteriorating? Ash?
Okay, signs and proactive action, right? So I already touched a bit on the signs. Like, for instance, sleep should be restorative, right? Whenever human beings sleep, that's how I switch it off and switch it back on again. And when that's not working, you know that, I'm very sorry, I'm going to keep using a lot of like software computer analogies, because it's the easiest way for me to contextualize the world. But if you find yourself in a place where when you switch it off and switch it back on again, it's still not working, you have an underlying software issue, right? That is the first red flag, and it's the biggest and loudest sign, right? You have your 8 hours of rest, it's not helping. Second sign is what Fifi touched on, and it's the fact that when the things that normally excite you or normally get you interested, they don't work anymore, right? Another bad sign is withdrawing from society. And I'd like to distinguish this from introversion, in the sense that when you're introverted, you normally have like a baseline of social interaction. So if you're happy interacting with people once a week, and you're introverted, that's fine. But once that one time a week feels like it's too much, and you need more isolation, red flag. If you're an extrovert and you need to be around people all the time, and you find yourself needing more and more alone time, big red flag, right? And all of this kind of points to your brain saying, I'm overloaded, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overstimulated, and I need room to kind of process what's going on. And I need to reboot. I need space to offload all of these files that are unsorted and go through them and organize them.
That is so true. And Fifi, just to add on what he said, is there a way in which we can fix this? Like, as an individual, I'm being sleep deprived, I'm not as rested, I'm uninspired. What are the key steps you can say a person should take? This is me, as someone who's part of the industry, the advertising industry.
I think first things first is, as an individual, continuously tell yourself that this is not the nature of the business. the business doesn't have to be that way. We need to stop telling ourselves that the nature of the business is to be burnt out, tired, overextending ourselves, always on, always working. There's no such thing as a rest day. Even on your rest day, you're working, and on your off day, you're working, on your weekend, you're on. It shouldn't be like that. It should never ever be like that. Because there's a reason why things such as working hours exist, so that you're given the opportunity to reboot and start over, so that you're fresh for the next day. But if I'm always on 24 hours, at which point do I get to detach from what it is you pay me to do, so I can come back and do it better? So I think for me, the first step is telling ourselves it is not the nature of the business. More importantly, developing boundaries with ourselves. Because a lot of the time I find that we find ourselves in these uncompromising situations because we break our own boundaries first in a bid to show that I'm so good at what I do and I'm willing to be a team player. But you work ethic, I work well under pressure. Let's all stop telling that lie in interviews. First point of departure. That's a lie we all need to stop telling. No one works well under pressure, okay? So I think once we learn to establish that boundary of self, will be where self-preservation starts, and that's when we'll be able to better mitigate before we get to that burning point of, oh my gosh, I think I'm spiraling.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I also think something else that works brilliantly is to write how you feel.
Yeah.
Because you get to thought check your emotions daily, which also gives you insight into, am I having a good day? Am I not having a good day? Where am I at? Where am I not at? And that way you get to backtrack and slowly see like, okay, I'm actually not in a good space. And then you can start to self-mitigate like that. Because we think about these things in the shower, but by the time you leave the shower and you're getting dressed for work, it's such a far removed emotion because now you're checked into, shit, my deliverables for the day are.
Yeah.
But when it's written down, you can always go back to see, damn, I'm not okay.
Right. And I think, we've just been talking about mental health and advertising from a one-on-one, you against your job. But let's talk about it holistically. The competitiveness, the need to have the brightest idea in the room, the out of this world. How does that eventually affect, morale? I think morale also plays a role in how you're going to operate in the industry. So how does that affect morale, your mental health, the fact that you're in this big competitive industry?
So it's human nature to be competitive, right? We have evolved certain instincts to be competitive, and we use competitiveness and excellence as social signals, right? But that's a whole spiel that I don't want to get into. So I think it's like a certain degree of competitiveness is healthy, right? But whenever you compete and succeed, you need validation in return to say, I've signaled to society that I'm really good at this. And society needs to signal back and say, we acknowledge that you're really good at this and we appreciate how great you are at this. So within the workspace, creative individuals need to be fed with validation. And there has to be a good ratio between the competitive nature of the work and the validation you receive in return, right? And at the same time, the competitiveness of the work shouldn't be like a variable that forces people to be overworked, because at a certain point it stops being competitive and starts being extraneous. And you don't want your work to take you from a place where you're racing to be number one and instead you're racing just to exist, because if you fall behind, there's a great big monster behind you that's going to swallow you up.
All right. And now, Fifi, just the last question, and you can just tap on it as well. Now we are talking, because the mental health, I want to believe it affects the industry players. These are the designers, the content writers, the strategists and everything. Now, what role can the industry leaders, the CEOs and everything, what do you think they can do to mitigate against the fact that the industry has reported high levels of mental health, 50% of which have admitted that we drink to cope, less sleep, and so on and so forth. What do you think industry leaders can then do in this instance? Someone owns the agency and they're watching this. What do you think they could actually do to make it a better environment?
So I think it starts with like you said, the people at the top.
Yeah.
We are responsible for the narrative we have painted of our industries because we are such client service people. We allow those who butter our bread to exploit us, and it should never be that way, because at the end of the day, you're not doing me any favors. You're paying me for what you're asking me to do for you. You get what I mean? We're servicing each other. So let's service each other respectfully. So I also need agency owners to understand that there's a value you bring. At the end of the day, the brands we service and what people see is a product of your work and the people you've empowered to deliver that. So we are worth something. So you do need to stand your ground to push back to the big corporates and the people we service by saying, Oaks, listen here, we love working with you guys, we love what we do, but we are also people-centric. We're not just in the service of selling to people, but we're also in the service of protecting our people. And in protecting our people, we are going to push back to say better timelines. Manage your business better so I can manage my business better. Simple.
Yeah. Ash?
I love what Fifi mentioned about like pushback and also to a certain extent boundaries. And I'm going to propose something that's a little out of the box. Well, not so much out of the box now because it's a trend that's picking up. I think more rest. People are at their most productive when they're at their best rested, right? So for instance, the 4-day work week, right? That is a fantastic.
I mean, we all want it.
Yeah, but there's scientific evidence. There are existing studies right now and ongoing studies right now that show that employees function much better, much more productive when they have more time to rest, right? And 4-day work weeks also force organizations to think more systematically about how they run their businesses, right? And on top of that, an interesting thing that I've seen from Scandinavian countries, particularly Germany, they're very rigid on work hours, right? And it's a badge of honor. If you can get your work done within your 8-hour day, it shows that you're particularly efficient and you're good to work with. If you have to work home and do overtime, etc., it's a sign that there is a lack of efficiency in the system somewhere, right? So enforcing rules that prioritize human rest and leisure time kind of pushes organizations to get a bit more efficient with their systems. And at the same time, clients get impressed because they're like, you deliver the same amount of work in 4 days that other agencies take like an entire week to do. You guys are incredibly efficient. Your people are well rested. And that's amazing.
Fifi, Ash, it was lovely having you guys. And that is it on episode 7, mental health in the advertising industry. Key things to take away is that you will know when you're about to crash, and it is really important to make sure that you attend to it. Industry players were also given tips to say, you know what, maybe make the work environment a little more bearable so that burnout doesn't become a thing. Otherwise, from me, Philomena Simono, let's do it again on episode 8.